Hey Ottawa, this is your Monday market snapshot for the Ottawa real estate market for Monday, January 29th, 2024. I cannot believe we're at the end of January already, but I've got your stats, I've got your details, and there's actually some pretty good surprises in here. So stick around past all the stats for the different areas because I've got some of the charts for the month end and some little tidbits on what I'm seeing in the market. My name is Annalee. I'm a realtor here in Ottawa, Ontario, and every week I bring you the stats on what's going on in the Ottawa real estate market. Let's go. Okay, first off, citywide, we see that the inventory again climbed. It was about the same amount of increase of inventory as we had last week. It was 21 increase in active listings, solely in the detached market. You see actually it decreased in the towns and condos. The sales increased quite significantly this week by 62 sales, and it was mostly in the detached and then the condos. The condos were really low last week, but it was across property types. Okay, so this is the inventory breakdown. We can see that the overall inventory, that's the black line, is climbing quite steeply and steadily over the last 4 weeks there. The active inventory, that's the light green, is climbing as well, however, not as steeply as the overall inventory. And that's because what we're seeing is the increase in sales and conditional sales week to week. Conditional sales remained steady. It's just a couple off of what it was last week, but the sales jumped up quite significantly this week. Okay, so our new listings, there were 264 properties listed this week, and that's a slight decline from last week. 63 properties of the properties, or 24%, were relisted properties, and the remainder, that's 201 listings, or 76%, were new to the market listings. So we see that the new listings weren't quite as high as even last week. I do think that we're going to still see over the next few weeks an increase to the number of active listings, and I think the sales will slow down a little bit just to steady off, like maybe steady off and then continue a slow climb. I don't think it's going to be as big of a jump as we saw this week. Okay, so now we can look at the actual sales. We had 19% of the sales that sold, houses that sold this week, sold with no conditions, and the average for the last 4 weeks sits at 17%. Of the properties that sold this week, 13% of those properties sold within 7 days or less. That was 21 sales, which is a huge jump in the number of sales happening within a week. And 33% of those, or 7 properties, sold with no conditions in that first week. 44% of the homes that sold this week sold in 30 days or less. So that was actually 72 properties. Okay, let's zoom into the different regions of the city and see what's going on, because it's different in the different regions, and I'll point out some of the differences this week. Okay, so the central urban region, we see an increase in inventory for detached and condos. That kind of matches with what we saw citywide, and the sales were a huge jump for the condos, 50% jump for the detached, and a slight decrease for townhome sales this week. Canada and Stittsville, this was where we were seeing all those conditionally sold properties the last couple of weeks, and a lot of them finally came to the sold list. We had 13 increase of detached properties sold, and also a slight increase for townhomes. And the active inventory actually climbed as well. So if you consider that, there was quite a large jump in the properties listed overall in Canada and Stittsville for detached homes. So we're sitting just shy of 100 detached homes listed in Canada, a drop for the townhomes, and just pretty steady for the condos. In Barrhaven, Riverside South, things were pretty slow. We've got no change and a very low inventory of detached homes in Barrhaven and Riverside South, sitting at 55. So that's like almost half of what there is in Canada and Stittsville. It's crazy. Townhomes, slight decrease, condos, slight decrease, and sales were up slightly for detached and townhomes, and down slightly for condos. So if you have a detached home in Barrhaven or Riverside South ready to get on the market, I would do so quickly because the inventory is really low and it might be a great time to list. And in Orleans, we see that there was a slight increase for the number of detached and towns listed, a slight decrease in condos, and sales were like what we saw in Barrhaven, very flat, just a slight increase for detached and condos, slight decrease for towns. Okay, so these are the full stats for the data, and you can see that there are a bunch of conditionally sold properties, not as many as sold. So on the detached market, I do expect perhaps the sales will drop down next week a little bit, depending on how many sell without any conditions. And residential, it's pretty steady for conditional and sold from week to week. And condos, I do expect a jump probably in the number of sales next week because the number of conditional sold is fairly significantly higher than how many sold this week. Okay, so since we're at the end of the month, I did want to check a couple of the charts that I usually include at the end of the month. One thing I noticed when I was checking the sold properties, which I check every day, I noticed that there were a lot more properties selling at or above the asking price. Over the last couple months, it's been very rare to see stuff sell like significantly above asking price. And this week I was kind of shocked to see how many properties there were. So 25% of the properties that sold this week sold above asking price, at or above asking price. I'd say probably 15% were above asking price and some quite significantly above asking price. So that led me to check this close price to original list price ratio. And you can see in the detached and the townhouse market, they're selling for a lot closer to the asking price. So I think that the number of properties that were selling above or at asking price is pulling up that average. It's not happening in the condo market so much. In fact, it actually dropped for this month. Okay, so I also wanted to check the average days to sell, and this one is not showing a big difference. In fact, I think what we're seeing is that there are a lot of properties that were still on the market from the fall across the holidays, and so the average is still quite high. There weren't a lot of properties that came on in the last month, and except for the last couple weeks. So there's a lot of the older stock is still selling and keeping that average quite high. But I do expect that to come down in the weeks and months to come as we move into the full spring market. Okay, so that was the update for the end of January. Just next week will be super informative with the sales prices and the all the charts and everything for the end of the month. We may or may not have the Ottawa Real Estate Board stuff, probably won't at that point, but I will have everything from the end of the month and it should be pretty good. So I hope you have a fantastic week and heading into February.